Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Inside Inter Miami, the Miami Herald's weekly show about Inter Miami Soccer Club. Andre Fernandez, Deputy Sports Editor, up from the Miami Herald here, once again, joined by Michelle Kaufman, our Inter Miami beat writer. And we're back after another non victory, unfortunately. We did have some of that. We did have some of that a little bit, but still no Messi, still no victory without Messi. And this team continues to try and pick up at least they pick up the 1 point, 7 goals, 5 assists in 9 games, but they're patching it up in the back. And really, the pink and black has not figured out how to win, at all. They had early in the season, but they've not figured out the formula to do it without Lionel Messi. So what can happen going forward, Michelle? Let's give them another good episode here. What's up with the latest with the man himself, Lionel Messi?
Yeah, well, that's the question that everyone has is he going to play tonight, Wednesday night? Is he going to play in the big match, Champions Cup quarterfinal first leg against Monterrey, a Mexican team that is very, very good. This team has won Champions League 5 times. It was called Champions League before it was Champions Cup, but they've won basically this competition 5 times. They're one of the top teams in Mexico. Many of their players are on the Mexican national team. In fact, many of them were coached by Tata, which is, we can get into that. It's going to be a very spicy, Mexican food can be spicy. This is going to be a very spicy rivalry, these
Picante.
next 2 games. The first game is going to be here Wednesday night and at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then the next leg is a week later in Monterrey, which is really going to be a wild scene. I can imagine that stadium seats 53,000 people. It's going to be packed. Mexican fans are extremely passionate. A lot of Mexican fans are not fans of Tata because he was the national team coach, and some people there felt he didn't do a good enough job. He got blamed for some of their failings. So, there's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of emotion going on between with these games. And their coach is also from Argentina. So don't think that there isn't some kind of rivalry there. Fernando Ortiz, an Argentine manager going up against Tata. So from Tata's point of view, there's a lot of angles, a lot of narratives going on. And as far as this team, let's do a quick recap of the NYCFC game, even though what really everyone wants to know about is the upcoming game. But just to review a little bit, 1-1, it wasn't a loss. It was much better than they did against the first New York team, which we won, 4-0 rout the week before, terrible in horrible weather. This one was in very nice weather, and it was at home, and they ended up tying 1-1 with El Pistolero getting back on the scoreboard, although he had 7 or 8 shots, and he could have scored more. I mean, the truth is he could have scored more, and he had a press conference today. It was one of the few times that we've had a chance to talk to him, and he said that he is very, very self-critical. He's always been a very self-critical player. And he said that he was so upset after this New York City game that it took him 48 hours. He said basically you could not talk to him for 48 hours. He said nobody could talk to me for 48 hours. I get very angry after games, not only if we lose, but also if I don't play well. And he said, even though we had one, we tied, he said, I felt that I could have done more. And that really bothered me for 48 hours. I was in a very bad mood. And he said, now I have a chance to redeem myself. It's basically what he said. He wants to redeem himself against Monterrey, against a very good opponent. He wants to show what he can do, and he wants the team to show what it can do. So, the game the other day, there were a couple interesting things. We mentioned the patchwork. They've got a lot of injuries in back at center back, and Christoph is out again for this next game. He has a hamstring injury. Freire was also out, and he is questionable for the game tonight, excuse me. He did practice. He practiced on Tuesday, so he will probably be available, I will say. But Tata would not say for sure. Basically, Tata said, for the $10 million question, is Messi going to play Wednesday night against Monterrey? The answer is we're going to wait until game day to let you know. We're going to wait until, just before the game to make the announcement. He did not rule him out, however. He had been ruled out of the previous few games. He's missed 3 games in a row now. He was ruled out of those games. Tata did not rule him out for this game. He said that it is possible that he will play. He did train with the group. We saw him with our own eyes in the media session that we were allowed to watch. He did come out a few minutes later than the others, but he came out and he was training with the full group on Tuesday. So the indications are, what I would say is the indications are that he is going to play, that they have been waiting and holding him to make sure he's healthy for this game and for these 2 legs. Tata would not say for sure, would not commit, but the indications are, look, he trained today, he trained at practice. Tata did not rule him out. This is a really, really big game. My guess would be that he is going to play, but it is not confirmed by Tata.
I feel Suarez on that. I'm the same way when I lose in pickleball or when my fantasy teams lose. I don't want anyone to talk to me for 2 days straight. I get miserable. But he has had a great start to his season. But bottom line is, yes, if Messi can play or not, because this team just can't figure it out without him. And that's a game, honestly, Lee. I know New York City FC, well, that's where they should have picked up 3 points. And we talked about it last week. This is the bottom feeder team right now in the league. They ought to be able to get, those are the games they have to win, shorthanded or not. And I agree with you. I think he does play, because I think it goes back to that same strategy. This is the smaller, more pressure-packed situation where you have to win each leg to advance in a tournament. They're saving him right now. They're saving him up for these big tilts right here, where it's, do or die, maybe not do or die single elimination, the one game, but the short format where you have to score as much as possible, get that aggregate score, whatever you need to survive in advance. And so,
yeah, you have 180 minutes. Right. Yeah, you basically have 180 minutes and you're going to survive or go home. So it's kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament, except it's double legs. But, this is it. They have 2 games against Monterrey. If they don't advance, they're done with the Champions League tournament. And this is a cup, as I mentioned before, the first prize is $5 million and a spot in the World Club Championship, the World Club Cup Championship, yes, tongue twister, next summer, which is going to be held in the United States. So there are high stakes. Basically, the games of these 2 Wednesdays are high stakes games against Monterrey. And, the next couple games against MLS teams, or the previous one and this coming one against Colorado, are lower stakes games. It doesn't mean they don't want to win them, but they are lower stakes right now than they would be if they were in October or September and they're in the middle of a playoff race, and then you do have to win and accumulate points. At this point right now, they're in second place. Of course, they'd rather be in first, but they're in second place in the East. They have another game coming up against Colorado on Saturday. Right now, the focus is on the Champions Cup. And, the game the other day, he played Busquets in the back line as a center back, which everybody was very surprised to see that. What Tata said is that he really felt that he didn't have options. Noah Allen had played some back there, but he didn't feel that that was the best option for them at this game. I think they wanted a little bit more height, more experience. So they put Busquets back there. And, I have to say that the one goal that NYC scored was surprisingly not on the side with Ryan Saylor starting his first game and Marcelo Cello Wygant also starting his first game for the whole club. They were on the right side and they actually held their own. The mistake came on the left side with Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets. They had a rare moment where Jordi Alba had a bad pass that was intercepted and Busquets was out of position. He's not used to playing that position, and that is where NYC took advantage and scored. But it was a new sort of looking team. It looks like they're going to go back to the 4-man lineup, the 4-man and back. That is what Marcelo said. I spoke to him yesterday. Cello Wygant had, and they just call him Cello, his jersey, which is number 57, which I'll tell you about why he wears that. On the back of his shirt, it says 57, and then it says Cello. That is his nickname. That's what he's called. He played very well. He just arrived from Boca Juniors. He literally just arrived last week, just got his work visa, and he went out and played. I thought that he looked very comfortable on the ball. He said that he felt very comfortable on the ball. And, he was he connected well with his teammates. He was very active. He had like 44, 45 passes. He connected on 84, 85% of his passes. So he played very well, considering that it was his debut with the team. He had just arrived from Argentina a few days before, and he's thrown into the fire to start the game. And he played pretty well. And Ryan Saylor was another surprise. Ryan Saylor had barely played this year, had just played very briefly off the bench against the Red Bulls when the game was already out of hand. And he played well. He really did. He held his own in place of Christoph. And we may see him again because Christoph is not going to play. He was the one who was ruled out. Tata said Christoph is definitely ruled out with a hamstring injury for the Monterrey game. So we will see with this game coming up. Is Freire back? If Freire does come back into the center back position, then Busi can play where he normally plays, and it can be more of a normal looking lineup. And we will see again if Leo Messi plays, which I expect that he will. But Tata wants to leave them guessing. Let's be honest. This is a big game. These are coaches. They don't want to share everything with the opponent. So Tata basically said, yes, this is a huge game. However, it's only April and we have a long season and we don't want to take any unnecessary risk. So we're going to make our announcement in 24 hours. We still have time to make this decision. So he was non-committal, but the indications are that Messi definitely was not ruled out. He did practice, which are two things that were not the case last week. So my guess, if I were taking a guess, is that he will play.
Yeah, especially with such a game changer like him. I know if Tata could, he wouldn't say anything at all until they're walking out there on the field, probably, if he could bottle it up to himself, especially in this game. Because as you said before, this is going to be picante, as we say spicy.
This
You
is
say it in the
picante,
Spanish word.
yes.
This is picante, like when they have the 3 little peppers on the menu. Like this is like 4 peppers. Like
this is the
be.
3 or 4 pepper. Yeah, this is the one where you have to have the giant glass of water right behind, because this is going to be, anyone who has seen games in Mexico of any kind, national team or league, those fans are very, very passionate to the point that they've been getting reprimanded when they play against the United States for racist comments and things like that, which is not pretty. And I really hope that it doesn't come to that with Inter Miami, because there are some fans in the Mexican fan base that do step over the line in their passion for the game. And so I hope that none of that happens in this game, and that it's just passion without racism. So let's hope that that is the case. But there is a lot there. First of all, the whole rivalry between MLS and Liga MX, which is like, which league is better? Liga MX has been around longer than MLS. MLS came along and some of the top Mexican players decided to play here rather than play in their own country. So that never sits well. And then, the Mexican rivalry with the United States national teams. That's the biggest rivalry in our region in CONCACAF, the USA against Mexico, 2-0, this and that. So there's a long history between Mexico and the United States. For this region, this is the biggest rivalry that the United States has. And this is the biggest rivalry that MLS has, which is Liga MX. And so now you've got the most hyped, highest priced MLS team in Inter Miami versus Monterrey, one of the crown jewels of their league, a team that has won Champions League 5 times, a team that always contends for the title there, a team that has a lot of national team players on their team. And they are going to be very familiar with Tata. Tata is going to be very familiar with them. He coached some of these guys. They were coached by him. Some of them have said some things that were not very nice about Tata in the last few weeks, suggesting that he was not a good coach, that he treated them like children, did not treat them like adults. And a couple of players on this roster have been critical of Tata in the media in the last few weeks. So this is going to be a really, really interesting game. And that Lionel Messi wants to play. He wants to play every game. I guarantee you he wants to play this game against Monterrey for sure.
Yeah, I think that you get some of the feel. It's very interesting because like we know that Inter Miami has a very Argentine feel to it because of all the Argentine players they have. But then the league itself and where obviously the team is located, you get and you have some of the American players or that want to see the rivalry between the two leagues you were talking about. It has that feel. It has that feel like in the World Cup when you've had USA against El Tri and just the those are the biggest games. Those rivalry games. We saw it in the World Cup a few years ago. One of the biggest wins in USA history was over Mexico a few World Cups ago. With Landon Donovan and those guys. So, and I'm interested too because, like you said, this is Monterrey. Monterrey is their Manchester United. This is their one of their premier of that league. To see them go up against this type of a team in this format is going to be interesting too. To see how they react, how they play, and then obviously can they come up with the result to keep going in this tournament, because this is the type of matchup you could get further in this tournament. I mean, you're getting it a little bit earlier in an earlier round, but it's something that could have been semifinal even or final in terms of the caliber of opponent.
Absolutely. And they really are very good. I mean, most people are picking Monterrey, they're considered a favorite, I would think, by a lot of people, by some of the stuff that I've seen on social media and everything. It's like, oh, this is going to be the end of, goodbye to Inter Miami in the Champions Cup. It's been nice knowing you type of thing. Monterrey is a very, very strong team. Just to give you an example, in the last two rounds, they played a team from Guatemala, Comunicadores, and they won 7-1 in that one. Comunicaciones from Guatemala. They won that aggregate 7-1, and then in the round of 16, they beat FC Cincinnati 3-1 in the round of 16. So they won both of their rounds. Previous to this, Miami, as we remember, tied Nashville 2-2 and then won 3-1. They got an automatic bid into the round of 16 by winning Leagues Cup last summer. So Monterrey is a very good team. They've already done very well in this tournament, the last two rounds. Over the last 6 games, if you want to look just at how they're doing recently, over the last 6 games, Monterrey has 5 wins and 1 tie. 5 wins and 1 tie over the last 6 games. And Inter Miami has 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 ties. So if you look at just pure form over the last 6 games, Monterrey is in better form. And also, the Messi question. If Messi comes back, it's a different team. It's a different team. And Luis Suarez was asked about it. How has it been to play without him versus with him? And he said, well, basically it goes without question. With him is I'm very familiar with him. We know each other well. He's just an amazing player. But if he can't play, they will have to win without him, which they did against DC United. That is the one win that they were able to get without Messi this year. But other than that, they have not been able to get the win. They've had tie, but losses, ties, not really many wins without the GOAT number 10 in the field. So it's pretty critical that he play in this game unless he absolutely can't.
But I think one thing that affects this team too, I mean, we like to think that Messi steps in and the switch flips and all of a sudden everything's fine and dandy. And yes, he has that effect on his team, but there's also something to be said about continuity too in a lineup, and having the same sort of being able to go with the same group or similar formations and have those same amount of players available for a decent span of time in a few games in a row and develop some consistency too. Hopefully with him being part of it, of course. But that's why you've talked about the last 6 matchups, 2-2-2. I mean, at some point they're going to have to get him in there a few games in a row and just continue to kind of develop that chemistry that he has. Maybe not with the guys he's played with so much before, but the other players on this roster. And in the long run, for the long-term goal, that's going to be curious to see how they're able to do that. And can he, because, health-wise, is he going to stack up and stay durable to be able to do that?
Yeah, they have not been consistent. And like you just said, I mean, how would they be consistent when every single week we're wondering who's going to be in the starting lineup? I mean, the lineup that
Right.
he had the other day, everybody was like, "What? Wait a minute. Ryan Sailor Ryan Sailor and Sergio Busquets are the starting center backs. Neither one had started a game at center back. And then at right back, you had Cello, who had never played before at all for this
Right.
team. So the only one of the four in the back who had played before was Jordi Alba. You know, that is difficult for these teams, even if they're talented players. It's very difficult for guys to just be thrown in, week out. Oh, you're starting today. Oh, no, you're not playing at all today. Oh, you're playing at center back when you've never played that, or you're playing at, this position. So they have not been able to develop consistency. And Boosie said that in New York. One of the things he said is we have not been able to develop consistency, and we need to do that because this it's not just because we're famous we're going to win. And Luis Suarez said that again today too, because he was asked about the Monterrey team, that they have a lot of big names from Mexican soccer, and he said yes, that's true. But as we know, he said basically from this team, like, it's not just what names you have, it's you have to prove it on the field. And this team has names. There's no question. If you had told me 1 year ago right now that I was going to be covering a team that has Lionel Messi, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, and Luis Suarez all on this team, I just would not have believed it. So these four guys are now on this team, and yet they're not in first place. They have 2-2-2 as their record over 6 games. So they're not just rolling through just because those guys' names are on the roster. They all have to be playing. They have to develop chemistry. They have to develop chemistry with the other players who are not those four. And that still has not been done. That still has not been done by this team. It's very early still. It's just the beginning of April. But there's a lot more that this team has to prove, other than just that they have names and have won a lot of trophies collectively among them.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see some of this because, yeah, like I said, Messi and high caliber, obviously that he has, but this Monterrey team has talent. They have a lot of good, solid players up front that are going to challenge this team on, especially on the defensive end, which has been well documented, as you said, their struggles on the back line. So Drake Callender is going to be tested, again, and he's got to step up. So they're gonna have their hands full for sure with this squad. But you got a chance to speak to Suarez, as we've talked about some of the things he's been saying. What's he kind of talked about a little bit? Just adapting to MLS, and so far, is he happy? I mean, he's had a great start so far this season. Is he happy with what he's done so far, and kind of what's he learned about playing stateside in the MLS?
Yeah, we had a chance to talk to him for the pregame press conference with Tata on Tuesday. And he's a very, very thoughtful guy. I really wish that we got to speak to him more often, because he really is quite thoughtful and gives very complete answers. He's also funny. Someone asked him, something about, you're a player who, the Mexican League has wanted you to play for them and such. And he jumped in and he said, no, the Mexican team did not want me this year. Last year they wanted me. This year they did not want me, and everybody laughed. He also talked about what I mentioned before, that he gets very, very grumpy after games and you can't talk to him. And he said that that's something that has been his entire career. That's how he's wired. That's how he is. He has a very, very hard time getting over losses, but also getting over chances that he thinks that he should have scored as a forward. And what he said was, I asked him the question about his adaptation, about his, how he's adjusted to this league. And I said, compared to what you thought coming in, how has it been? How do you feel that you've adapted? You look like you're more comfortable now than you were at the beginning. And he said that what he has learned so far is that he has confirmed what other people that he knows had told him about this league, was that it's a very competitive league. And he said much more competitive than people out there who have never watched it would think. He said that it's a very competitive league, that the other teams are all trying to beat this team. And that makes it even more difficult than if you were just playing for another MLS team. He's playing for an MLS team that has a big target on its back. Everybody wants to beat this team because of all the stars that are on this team and the high profile status of this team. So he said, that it's really been difficult and challenging, which is what people had told him that he knows. And he said that he has now confirmed that for himself, that it's definitely not easy. But he's treating this league, he said, the same way he's been throughout his whole career, which is that he just wants to score goals. And he said, I don't care where I am or who's around me. He said, yes, I have to learn the new players and their tendencies, and they have to learn mine. But at the end of the day, I'm here to do exactly what I did before at every stop of my career, which is to score a lot of goals. That's what I'm here to do. That's what they're paying me to do. And he's going to do everything in his power to do that. And he already has, like we mentioned, 9 goals. 9 games, 7 goals, and 5 assists, by the way. He has 7 goals and 5 assists in 9 games. He's one of the leaders of the whole league, definitely the leader of this team. Messi has 5 goals in 5 games, which is also really good. So if the both of them were playing together, that is a very, very formidable duo. And we have seen it, and we will see it once they get back together again. So, if both of those guys play against Monterrey, it makes it a very different game. And, Luis Suarez was basically saying that he's just really, really happy to be here. He even answered one question in English, which Tata joked because the reporter asked the question in English of both of them. And Luis Suarez was able to understand the question and answered it, in broken English, but in English. And Tata basically said, I'm too old. I need the translation. And so the translator had to repeat the question for him. But Luis Suarez basically said that he's very, very happy. He is feeling very comfortable now with living here, with the team, with the league. He has very, very big goals to win a lot of trophies with this club and score a lot of goals. And he said that he feels good physically, and he's looking forward to this game against Monterrey. He said, this is what you live for, these kind of cup type games where it's do or die and you're playing against some of the best teams. And he knows about Monterrey. There are players on that team. Hector Moreno, who's their captain, played in Spain and played in Europe for many years. And he said he's very familiar with a number of their players who have spent some time in Europe. So the players who are on this team who have spent time in Europe will be familiar with the Mexican players who have also spent some time in Europe.
It should be a great matchup. It should be a great series to see who comes out on top and moves on in this Champions Cup. But I almost feel,
the winner.
yeah.
By the way, I hadn't mentioned that whoever wins,
Yeah.
it's a 2-leg series, right? They have to win an aggregate score.
Right.
If they advance, they go on to the semifinals, and they would play either the Columbus Crew or Tigres, which is one of the other top 3 teams of Mexico. So they would go from playing one of either the defending champion of MLS. Gressel was on that team, so it would be Gressel would get to play his former team. So they're either going to play the defending champion Columbus Crew if they advance, or they're playing Tigres, which is one of the other top tier teams in Mexico. So they would go from one top tier team with crazy fans to another top tier Mexican team with crazy fans.
Yep. It's a great atmosphere for sure. Obviously, they got to get clear of this hurdle first, and they'll do that. Now, interesting, we don't want to totally neglect the MLS schedule. Before our next episode, they're going to play 2 matches. They're going to play, obviously, this big one with Monterrey, but then they're back home playing Colorado. And again, long season, but you've already kind of not been able to take advantage, let's put it that way, of getting as many points as possible in the standings with some quote unquote winnable games like New York City FC. Well, here comes a Colorado team that's 2-2-2, just like, they're 3-2-2 at Miami. So a team that is also sort of on a okay start, but a team that's been vulnerable. They've given up 10 goals this season. That's what Inter Miami specializes, especially when they're at full strength, is scoring in bunches. So 2 things. Can they get those 3 points in the meantime while they're in between this Monterrey intense battle that they're going to be on? And how do they, again, bringing back to the whole thing, How do they shuffle the
The load
pieces? Does
management.
Messi play?
Exactly.
Does he not play? And then comes back when they go to Mexico. Wonder how they handle this in the weekend.
Yes, I think that that is the question everyone's going to ask. And I know that, the MLS fans and the league itself and Apple at some point are going to start saying, wait a minute here. Lionel Messi came to MLS and he's playing every game except the MLS games. He missed three. If he misses the Colorado game, that would be four. 4 games in a row for MLS. Now, in the grand scheme, when you're Tata, and he is in a chess game basically of how am I going to have the best chance to win every cup that we're in. So they are in, if you're Tata, we're not just speaking as journalists or as fans out there, but if you are the manager of this team and you are Tata and you have the Champions Cup right now, you're going to have the Leagues Cup in the summer, and you have MLS Cup, which is the final is played in December and the season goes through November. What are you going to do with an April game, an April 6th game against Colorado Rapids? Are you going to play your strongest lineup on April 6th against Colorado, a game that is sandwiched between the Monterrey must-win games of Champions Cup? That game Saturday is going to come after the Wednesday game and just before the next Wednesday game. So smushed in the middle of those two big-time Monterrey games. And everyone, by the way, in Mexico, this is the biggest story. If you turn on the media or you follow any of the media from Mexico, this is all they're talking about over there is this
Sure.
Monterrey against Messi, Monterrey against Inter Miami. There were a lot of Mexican reporters here for this game that have flown in that are covering the game here. And when this team gets to Mexico and tries to show up in their hotel, just unbelievable what's going to be the scene over there. So it's a really big story, these two games. And sandwich right in the middle of it is Colorado Rapids early season MLS game. If you are Tata, are you starting your strongest lineup? I feel he won't. He already gave a little tiny hint because when he was asked about his lineup for the NYCFC game, and he was asked, do you think you might rest players for the opening game of Monterrey? And he said, no, I don't feel we need to rest players because they had a whole week between the two New York games. There's a whole week. He said, now the following week, hint, hint, hint. He said the following week, when we have Colorado in between the two Champions Cup games, then we're going to have some decisions to make. So that to me was a clue. I don't see him playing. If Messi plays, I know the fans of Inter Miami will be really disappointed if he doesn't show up for the 4th MLS game in a row. But I don't know. If you're Tata, Andre, let's say you're Tata, what do you do?
No offense to Colorado, but this game's in the way. It is, and that's the way the schedule. It feels like it almost feels like you're. Let's say you're an NBA team in the middle of a playoff series, then you're asked to play another game separately, like between games 3 and 4 of the series. No, like we want to divert all our attention, all our strength, and everything, all our focus on winning this game against Monterrey. So this game, right smack in the middle. Let's be honest. I'm just being real. It's in the way, but it's a regular season game, and you can pick up 3 valuable points that down the road, who knows, maybe they're in a dogfight, and you're going to say, hey, oh, God, I wish they would have beaten New York City FC. I wish they would have won that Colorado game. If they'd have picked up 3 then instead of 1 on the draw or something. So.
Yeah. It could come back to bite them in the butt in the back of the season because when they're because they think now it's one of those things like you always think you're going to have more time, even in life and everything. You always think, oh, I have time for that. I'm going to deal with that later. I'm going to worry about that later. And then all of a sudden later comes and you've run out of time. That could happen with this team. If they're not careful, they've already gone from first place to second. What if they then drop to third, drop some more points? If they keep doing that and keep saying, well, we have time, then they're going to find themselves in the situation they were this year when Phil Neville lost his job because the team was way down at the bottom of the table. And even though it was only June, the hole was already very, very deep, and it became insurmountable. It became very impossible pretty much to get out of. Maybe they would have if Messi had stayed healthy, but considering all of the variables that they have, they really do need to collect as many points as they can in the league season. And again, this is a winnable home game against not one of the top teams at home. So it'll be interesting to see what lineup does he put out there on Saturday.
I think from what we've seen so far, now granted, it's been 6 matches out of, the entire MLS season, 30,
34,
34
for
matches. Sorry.
MLS,
Yeah.
plus these cups, plus the other
Yeah.
cups.
No,
Yeah.
but only MLS. Let's say I feel like the point I'm trying to make is I think we can't, or they shouldn't. I'm saying they do, but you can't, even as an observer, can't have because we keep saying, oh, what if they're the second, third? I don't think we can have even the arrogance of thinking they're that high until they prove they can consistently win these MLS games, and knowing that they're not going to have those lineups intact all the time, maybe not even frequently, at least they have right now, until they
Yeah,
can
they didn't beat
start.
NYC. Yeah,
No,
they didn't beat
until they,
NYC
yeah,
at
until
home.
they start
At
doing
home.
that, we can't
Yeah.
imagine a world just because of the big names that they're the second, third, top seed. What if they're down by like 7 and need those points at the end of the
Yeah.
season? I mean, it's not unthinkable looking at what's happened so far and knowing that the man himself is not going to be there every time. In fact, maybe a lot of times not going to be there. And if they don't figure out a way to win at least a good portion of these games without him, they could be in danger if they don't pick up these valuable points.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I read that Monterrey actually rested some players for their last game this past weekend, which was their first loss. They lost to Guadalajara in a game where they ended up with 9. I think they had 2 players ejected, ended up with 9. But the coach held out a few players, saving them, I think, for this game against Inter Miami. So managers, that are dealing with these cups mid-season, whether it's in the United States or Mexico, are dealing with some of the same challenges that Tata is dealing with.
Yeah. And that's the thing. This is all still very new because they've never been this big of a brand until Messi got here to be involved in all these tournaments and juggle his schedule. I mean, granted, they have a guy like Tata who has handled it before and players who have handled it before. So that obviously helps. But we're new in a way of seeing this front and center. A lot of people in Miami and so on have never seen this particular club deal with this on such large of a scale. So it's going to be interesting to see how it continues to be a balancing act. And it's a dilemma. It really is a dilemma because you don't necessarily want to go all out, but you don't want to, just dismiss it either. Every game literally
you also
is
do want to
important.
please, and you do want to please the fans too. And by the way,
And there's that. Yeah.
MLS is counting on Messi to promote their league, not to promote Champions League and whatever. They are expecting him to be on Apple TV when Inter Miami is playing New York and Colorado and Columbus and all these teams. I mean, that was the idea. And I'm sure the Apple executives, when they're getting the non-Messi version of the team, that is not what they really want.
Right.
They want Messi on those Apple. They want Messi on the iPhone. They want Messi on the iPad. They want Messi everywhere on the iProducts. And if it's the non-Messi version of the team, even though it does have other good players, at some point, I think the Apple executives would get a little frustrated. I think that the MLS executives would get a little frustrated if he's basically saying, hey, I'm just going to play. Everything else is my priority, and the MLS is secondary to me.
Right.
That's not going to sit well after a certain number of games. It's still early, but let's see what happens going forward.
The Apple TV package has to have its value fulfilled, and that is by having that man in the lineup playing, even if he's playing not the entire 90, but he's playing half
30
the
minutes,
match. Something.
Anything, half.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to have it.
And all the advertisements for the team and the advertisements for Apple. There's a lot of Messi on there. There's a lot of Messi's face everywhere. And, we saw what happened in Hong Kong. When you advertise Messi and then you don't deliver Messi, at some point people get upset. So they do have to also balance that, the expectation of the fans who bought season tickets for this team. And I include my husband, who owns a season ticket and is paying double this year. Why did they charge double this year? Because of the stars, particularly
Right.
Messi, the ticket prices went up double. And now, but you're paying double the price, but you're, not getting Messi. I
Yeah.
don't know. People are going to start to be a little bit upset about that, I think. We'll
Oh
see.
yeah. When if Apple TV's subscription numbers go down, there's going to be heads will roll for a reason, and yeah, you can't have that. So very very interesting, the on and off the field repercussions of this whole juggling act in the palm of their hands over there, and let's see how they do it. We're going to see another example of it over the next week, where they're battling Monterrey and in the middle trying to handle the Colorado Rapids. But Michelle and I will be back next week to talk a little more about those matches, preview the second leg of the Monterrey double there to see what their situation is and can they advance in the Champions Cup. But until then, we thank everybody for watching and for listening once again. Remember, you can catch us on YouTube or at MiamiHerald.com. You can see that. You can listen to it. If you can't see Michelle doing the guns, you're gonna at least listen and imagine her doing the guns. If you're listening
Imagine
to
that
it,
I'm doing guns. I only do
right?
guns when Luis Suarez scores. When he doesn't score,
Correct.
no guns.
Yeah. So far so good. There's been a lot of goals, so a lot of that. But anyway, thank you for listening and watching us, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Inside Inter Miami.